where that speaker's coming from, where's this information coming from, what's in it for the speaker, what are they trying to accomplish. So despite being a good Canadian who doesn't like to talk about themselves, I need to kick off by telling you where I've learned this material, and that way you can judge whether it's for you or for not. So I've been an entrepreneur since I was 13 years old, which is a long time ago. I took my first company public at age 31, Canada's top 40 under 40. I was very blessed to become an investor in the late 90s during the dot-com boom. I've been awarded the National Mentor of the Year for Canada, had a chance to be a visiting scholar at Tel Aviv University in Israel, have traveled to Australia representing our country, to China. But I'm more than just a lecturer or an author. I'm also an entrepreneur. I've had 6 startups myself, 2 very nice successes, 2 medium ones, and a couple of failures along the way. Most recently, about 18 months ago, I sold my startup for just under $35 million, in addition to being a professor. So as a professor, I studied at the University of Glasgow at the Adam Smith School of Business as an entrepreneurship scholar. I spent 5 seasons with Dragon's Den helping the CBC kind of figure out how capitalism works. I was originally invited to be a dragon, but then they told me I had a face for radio. So they put me behind the scenes, and I was very blessed to meet entrepreneurs across the country for 5 seasons as we did auditions. Eventually, they put me in front of the camera, and they gave me a show called The Naked Entrepreneur. There's no nudity, so don't get too excited. The Naked Entrepreneur, which appears in the Oprah Winfrey Network, I just sit down with a billionaire in front of a live student audience and just talk about all the things that no one talks about. All the downsides, all the price that people pay for entrepreneurial success. You can catch it on Rogers TV. What else can I tell you? I've written a few books. Some of them have even sold well. Most of my time is spent as an investor. I'm a partner at Ryerson Futures, which is the Ryerson Seed Fund. In the last 24 months, here's a few of our deals. Mostly what I invest in is software as a service, mostly on the business-to-business side. So most of our founders are building solutions for other businesses. And they range from artificial intelligence to machine learning to cryptocurrencies to quantum encryption, lots of different varieties. But I've been an investor for now over 20 years in 3 different funds, and I'm hoping that I can share with you some of the perspectives that I've learned along the way. So with that, I want to start with the concept that I learned, which is always to know your audience. So not all sources of seed capital are the same. You have individuals, that includes friends and family and founders. You have entrepreneurs who are CEOs of major technology companies who have capital to invest. And then you have angel investors, which in Canada is a high net worth individual who writes checks from their own account. And now we even have something called angel funds and organized angel groups. The next level up is seed funds. Ryerson Futures is a seed fund. We have limited partners who gave us our money. We now invest that money. And in 5 years, those people want their money back. There's accelerators like Techstars and the DMZ. There's even things like crowdfunding. So there's a lot of different places to get capital. And that's what I'm going to focus on today, how the origin of the capital, who you're talking to, has a lot to do with the positioning that you need to be exerting. I think a lot of people think that all investors do all deals, and that couldn't be more from the truth. I'm a seed stage investor. So I typically invest when someone has a prototype and a few pilot customers, and then I typically grow that person until they're starting to scale up. You know, we typically do a few $100,000 in an investment, not in the millions. So we would be in the seed space. We would be in the space in the second box. But as you can see, there's a different type of investor for different people, which always makes the question of why do people pitch all investors the same? You know, if you look at this, you can see that the banks and the later stage people, they want much more profit and much less risk. I think if you want to talk more specifically, what we're going to focus on is angels, accelerators, and seed venture capitalists. These are all people who can write checks for under $1 million. These are all people who want to hold that investment for 5+ years. These are all people who won't consider it a success unless you give them back 10 times the money. So if I invest $500,000 to you, I need to get back $5 million within 5 years. And the reason is simple, because I've made so many of these investments and many of them won't come fruition. So you have to make up for their losses. Most of these funders, angels, accelerators, and seed venture capitalists are the first arm's length money to go in. So that's after your money is in, that's after your friend's money is in, that's after your family money's in. Usually they want other people to go first. Why should they put their money in if you're not going to put your money in? And so I want to focus a little bit on that. Almost all investors look at only 8 different things: the background, what's at risk, the co-founders, the capability of the business, the market size, the product market fit and how close it is, where the information is coming from, how we can get out. So in most cases, they're looking to learn this information in a variety of ways, sometimes through an investor presentation, sometimes through an explainer video, sometimes through an elevator pitch. So what people don't tell you is what they're really looking for, right? Every investor has something called an investment thesis, and outside of that thesis, they will not invest. I won't invest in companies in Hong Kong. It's outside of my thesis. I have to be able to work with my companies as part of my investment. So that means I'm not going to invest in Israeli or Russian or Hong Kong-based startups. Most people are looking for this 10x advantage. What is it that you have that is exponentially better than other people? Tinder is 10 times better than going to the bar to meet someone. Coachability is something you can affect. There's a no asshole rule, which is kind of funny considering who makes the rule. But the no asshole rule means that if I can't work with you for 5 years, if I don't think you're coachable, if I don't think you can take advice, if I don't think you have what it takes, then I'm just not interested, because I only get 10 or 12 bets and I'm not going to waste them on someone I can't work with. Most investors only focus on what are called moonshot ROIs. No one's looking to double their money. No one's looking to make 10%. Everyone's looking for the next Google, at least in their minds. And most importantly, people have a thesis and they have a portfolio they built on that thesis. So for instance, pitching me biotechnical startups doesn't make any sense. I've never invested in one. I have none of them in my portfolio, and I can't offer any value. I can offer value to software startups that are selling to enterprise because I've been doing it for 20 years. So I want to know why people come to me. I want to know how this meets my thesis. As Dale Carnegie famously said in his book 100 years ago, nobody cares about you. They want to know what you can do for them. Most of all, people don't have the traction necessary to garner investment. So we should spend a minute on that, right? What is traction? So traction is sales, traction is user base, traction is proof that you're not the only person. If we start at the beginning, you can get small amounts of money with just a minimum viable product, a prototype, maybe something that shows where you're going with it. But as you move into angels and accelerators and pre-seed VCs, they want more. They want a working prototype. They want full-time founders. They want early sales, early deployment, early proof of concept if you're not a revenue-focused startup. But they're not looking for you to pay to build your product, and they're not looking to pay and have you quit your job. They're looking to fund a business that has a high-end potential. And so we start to see that a lot of these deals don't get done, not because it's not an interesting idea, but because there's no match between the investor and the opportunity. This is something that my professor, Steve Blank at Stanford, came up with, and it's quite good. It's called the investment readiness level. And instead of looking at traction, it sort of gives the entrepreneur different milestones of where you have to go to get money. So friends and family, they love you and they'll put up with a lot of risk. So they'll probably take a non-automatic MVP, a handmade solution, a very basic product, very basic prototype. But as you move up into angel investors and venture capitalists, you really need to have more success, more proof than just I ran a survey and people thought it was interesting. I looked up recently in an article why people say no in the seed stage. And these are most of the reasons. On Dragon's Den, only about 20% of the deals that shake hands get done. And the number one reason is because what they discussed didn't turn out to be true. What they called a purchase order wasn't a purchase order. What they called sales was interest, not revenue. Not doing their homework. People coming to pitch me biotechnology is really easy to say no to. Things that have unrealistic valuations, things that have inexperienced first-time founders, people who are uncoachable, all of these are all pretenses to not engage. But it's not all bad. It's not all bad. In fact, there's been one major change in the last 2 decades, and most noticeable in the last 10 years, that has changed everything. When I was a young lad and I was in MBA school in the 90s, if I wanted to start a business, I couldn't really do much because it took hundreds of thousands of dollars even then to build a website, to build a store. And so if you didn't have money or you didn't have access to money, you had to find that first. Well, something's changed over the last 2 decades. And that's really that the cost to launch a startup, the cost to test your ideas, the cost to see if anyone cares what you're building is much less. In fact, it's under $500, where once it was in the millions. Let me try to explain to you why that is. So in the 1990s, there was nothing. The internet was like Alaska 1,000 years ago. There was no water, there was no heat, there was no hydro. And until that infrastructure got built, if you wanted to do a website or a store online in 1995 or 1997, you had to code everything from scratch. There was no drag and drop. There was no blog templates. You had to code everything, which meant not only did you have to have a great store, let's say you were selling jewelry, you had to have great jewelry, but now you had to have great e-commerce. You had to have payment processing. There was no LinkedIn or Facebook, so you couldn't log in. You need to have an authentication system. You couldn't advertise because Google AdWords didn't exist. So you had to find a way to get every customer in. So a company starting a jewelry store in 1997, it could cost $5 million and take 2 or 3 years before we realized that it's not a good idea. Now, what happened was we had the Googles, we had the Amazons, we had Apple and a variety of other companies like Cisco build out the infrastructure. And so by 2005, 10 years into this sort of digital new world, the cost to do that same jewelry website had dropped because you could now use Google AdWords. You could now use PayPal. Go ahead 5 more years, we've entered what they call Web 2.0. And now Facebook is becoming a thing, and the cost again drops. Well, we continue that phenomenon year after year after year. And as the layers of the internet get added from Google to Facebook, from Facebook to Uber to Slack, what we saw was more users, and the cost to launch dropped dramatically. So I could launch that same jewelry store that I launched in 1995 for $5 million, and I could do it with $500 and a Shopify store. And the reason for that is this change. So there's good and bad parts to this change, right? If you can launch a startup for $500, then everyone can launch a startup. So that's great news. You no longer need an investor like I did 20 years ago to get started. Right now, investors expect you to come to them after you've gotten started, after you've spent the first thousands, after you've found your first customers. And so the good news is there's nothing stopping you. The bad news is there's nothing stopping anyone else, which means there's so much noise in the market. Anyone can start a startup. Anyone with a dream and some click and paste and some time and effort can follow the lean startup methodology. So the good news is most of you don't need investors. You just think you do. And the bad news is that the people who do need investors, there's lots more of them. This is an interesting explanation that talks about where you start and where other startups around you. Valuation is what the company is worth at the time. I think you don't really pay a lot for valuation. I pay for execution. But as you can see that as you get more and more towards revenue, as the risk gets lower, the valuation goes up. But what's more interesting is as you need the money less, more people will give it to you. In the early days where you're at mock-ups and MVP, it's really friends and family and maybe some angels and accelerators that will support your growth. Venture capitalists are not investing in startups who don't know their business. They're investing in startups who want to scale. Venture capitalists are giving $2 to $5 million when you can show that you can turn that $2 to $5 million into $10 to $15 million in revenue. And you have to have a lot more proof than just an MVP and a good idea. All of that is simply background that sets us up for pitching in 2020. So no matter where you are in the life cycle, you are a pitching entrepreneur. You are always out there trying to get people to support you, whether that supports you through sales or support you through investment or support you by joining the company or by giving you a break on the fees. You are always pitching your company. You will give your elevator pitch dozens of times a week, if not a day. And what are investors looking for? They're looking for the very basic information. And what's most important to understand is that while you're pitching an investor might be a unique thing, it isn't a unique thing the other way. I'll hear 10 to 20 pitches a week. And so for me, I need to get to the heart of the matter right away. Who do you work with? What are you delivering? What is it that you do uniquely? Whom are you serving? And what makes you the best team to do that, right? We know that there's an anatomy of a pitch. It starts with a very interesting hook, something that catches your attention. We know it lays out the problem. It talks about the solution. It touches upon the market size, talks about the traction, the team, and the ask. These are true whether your pitch is 5 minutes or 45 minutes and 10 slides. You're still going through that same process of hooking someone into listening and then laying out the problem and laying out how you solve it and why you're the best group to solve it. So I want to show you how that plays out, and we can do that by looking at 3 tools: the elevator pitch, the investor deck, and the explainer video. So let's take them one at a time. Let's see if I can do this without breaking anything. So go back to here. Cleo, do you see me?
Yep, you good?
This is what I looked like before children.
Yeah, everything's all good on this part.
If you've got a great idea but need the cash to make it go, well, then you better start working on your elevator pitch. What is an elevator pitch? It's the term used for the 2-minute presentation, the exact amount of time it takes to go from the lobby to the investor's office on the top floor to capture investor interest. Get it right, and they'll invite you into the boardroom. Get it wrong, and they'll call security. What makes a good elevator pitch? A good elevator pitch is made up of 2 key elements. First, you have to lay out the pain statement. What problem is it that you are trying to solve? Second, you must show the value proposition. How does your venture solve that problem? That may sound easy, but it's not. Every great elevator pitch must meet 4 key tests. First, it must be succinct. After all, this guy's only going to give you 2 minutes. Number 2, it must be easy to understand. There's no room for TED Talk in an elevator pitch. Both your grandma and your grandkids have to get it. Number 3, it must be greed-inducing. After all, investors want to make money, and lots of it. Number 4, it has to be irrefutable. If your elevator pitch leaves investors with more questions than answers, well, you better go back to the drawing board.
So I think that proves. I think that proves why they don't let me on the show. So let me get back to my slides. There we go. So an elevator pitch is this short little pithy thing that you start every conversation with. It's a combination of the pain that you're trying to solve and the value proposition, the exponential value you bring. And we use these sort of criteria of irrefutable, succinct, easy to understand, and greed-inducing. I think it's a lot easier to see. So let me give you a couple examples here. Let's say we were pitching Viagra. The elevator pitch might be, people want to have sex longer than our bodies will allow. Our blue FDA-approved pill allows them to do so in a cost-effective, embarrassment-free, clinically proven manner. Or you could do eBay's elevator pitch. One person's trash is another person's treasure. Our online global garage sale brings together buyers and sellers from around the world. And they use our proprietary trust-based platform. The idea of an elevator pitch is it gives you a starting point in conversations. You will use it to attract resources. You will use it to attract investors, to form partnerships, employees. It's really important to get it down because people think if you can't even do that, then maybe you don't understand the value of your business, right? And if you look at the lean startup methodology, this way that we do startups since 2008, pitching is a part of life. Every customer starts with an elevator pitch, every dialogue. And so it takes a lot of pitching to get to that point. If you look at the the lean startup method. You know, you have a founder team and they come up with these assumptions on how the business should work. And then they go through a process of customer discovery and customer validation. And it's all to understand what their customers' need are and to prove out this business model. This whole process is pitching. This whole process is made up of multiple iterations of pitching. Or you can look at it a different way. So this is how to start a startup as taught by Ryerson. So this takes you from idea to product market fit. And if you look at the different stages along the way that we teach, you can see you're pitching when you identify the customer group. You're pitching when you go to find co-founders. You're pitching when you're testing the prototype with group members. You're pitching when you're looking for early adopters. You're pitching when you are trying to grow your sales. You're pitching when you're iterating. You're pitching, and I think you get the idea. The idea is that if you need the elevator pitch this much, it's better to get ahead of it now. And so I would ask you that the first thing you should do in homework is work on your elevator pitch. The next thing will be the slide deck. Now, I don't want to bore you and tell you about each slide and show them to you. I've included 2 links. My first mentor was Guy Kawasaki, who was the chief marketing officer of Apple. And he became a venture capitalist, and he came up with these magic 10 slides. There's no magic to them, but they're pretty well accepted. And why I say they're well accepted is if you're going to see 1,000 slide decks a year, you'd like to see them all organized in a certain way. And what is that way? It's exactly what we've been talking about. Starting with the problem, talking about how we solve that problem, talking about what the market for that solution is, talking about how we feel we can monetize it, giving people third-party arm's length evidence called traction, that we're not the only ones who think this is a good idea, talking through what makes you better than the competition. That anatomy of the pitch just gets translated into 10 slides. And yes, my students always tell me there's actually 11 slides if you count the title. That's not the point. The point is that this 10 slides that you use with an investor comes from this. It's the same thing. It's just explained way. Now, people like to know if I only have an hour with my investor, how should I split my time? This slide tells you how to split your time. That's Guy Kawasaki, and this is the rule I like to give everyone. It's called the Guy Kawasaki's 10-20-30 rule. You should never have more than 10 slides. You should never talk for more than 20 minutes, and you should never have anything less than a 30-point font. The reasons are simple. You want to keep the investor's attention. You want to accept that the investor is hearing many presentations, and you want to give them easy hooks to hang on to. They're always listening for unsophisticated founders, unrealistic objectives, or people who lack the traction. The third tool that people use to attract investment today are called explainer videos. They're a variation of what we've already seen. An explainer video is a 2-minute video that outlines basically more than the elevator pitch, less than the investor slideshow. And I've given you 3 from very famous companies to help you create your own. Explainer videos are very popular in the investment community because they allow you to send it ahead of you, and it's kind of like a little introduction. So you'll see these all over. They're quite fascinating and quite fun. I want to spend the majority of my time talking about biggest mistakes, best tips, and sharing with you what I've learned along the way, and then opening it up for you to ask me any questions that you can. I want to start with a couple of mistakes and things that you can fix in any level of presentation. So the #1 mistake I've seen in 20 years is not matching. Trying to get Bell Mobility Ventures to invest in something that wasn't telco. Trying to get a biotechnology investor to invest in a software company. Trying to get a late-stage funder to do an angel deal. If you don't match the person you're pitching, there's 0% chance it will be a good meeting, a productive meeting, a meeting that leads to what you want. If you don't have the traction necessary for that level of investor, there's no point in pitching them. You're not the exception to the rule. You really need to understand where in the cycle of growth you are, whether you have what's called problem solution fit, whether you have what's called product market fit, whether you're ready to scale, and then you need to line that up with those people who are doing those deals at the time you need the money. And so I often recommend that you need to spend more time getting to know the investor than the investor gets to know you. If you're going to spend 50 hours looking for funding, you should spend 50 hours researching it and then only have 4 or 5 meetings, because you should eliminate those people who your value proposition doesn't resonate with. This is another way to look at the same picture, right? We saw it here, we see it here. This just shows you where risk and value comes together. And as you can see, the more profitable, the less risky you are, the more people want to fund you. In the early days, the funding usually comes from crowdfunding or family and friends, occasionally from an accelerator or an incubator, occasionally from an angel or private funding. I would ask that before you go and pitch, you go look up some information about the investor. Have they done any deals in your space? Have they done any deals with your competitors? Do they have enough dry powder? Every fund has a limited amount of capital to deploy. Are you in the right sector? Are you in the right stage? Do you have the right geography? Are they willing to fund a company as far away from you as they can? So don't pursue every investor. Don't spend 50 hours chasing 50 meetings, 1 hour each. Spend your time so that you're really focused and get great results. The second mistake that I see most people do, you see it on Dragon's Den all the time, they tell you that their customers love you, but they don't show you that your customers love you. As an investor, I have thousands of entrepreneurs pitch. Not one of them told me their idea sucked. Not one of them ever told me this wasn't a good deal. So how can I tell one from another if they're all telling me it's the best deal ever? Well, we rely on showing. Because the cost to launch is so low, we expect you to have proof when you come to get our money. We expect you to have third-party evidence around what is important to your business. Don't tell me your customers love you. Show me that the average customer returns to your website to buy again every 7 days. That shows me they love you. Right? You need to focus on actual real numbers, things like day over day growth or week over week growth or month over month growth. Stuart Butterfield pitched the company Slack a number of years ago. He didn't walk around saying everyone loves Slack. He showed the chart that's in front of you now, which shows the growth of Slack over its first 24 months. And it's that curve that led people to believe he must be onto something and led for the growth of Slack and the early funding. So when you're early on in your startup, focus on the important metrics, things that show you're not crazy, things that show the assumptions are true that you're relying on. Work backwards. If you want to have new users as your metric, how do I get there? That has to be it. But focusing on how popular your website is or how many followers you have on Twitter, unless that's your business model, isn't going to really provide any evidence to investors. A couple final points before we move into the question and the answers. I think it's really a different landscape now. In the 90s, when I started in venture capital, it was a black box. No one shared how they did business. No one had reputational scores. No one had public track records. But over the last 20 years, it's gone quite transparent. And so you can look up almost every investor, from an angel investor to a VC, and see their actual deal flow, get actual feedback and ratings. There's places like thefunded.com and AngelList, which have really made access to capital possible. But you still need a good idea. You still need the hardworking founder. You still need the traction. So what I always recommend is that instead of going to the investors themselves, look up who they've invested in, and then go to those founders. Ask those people how they got the money. Was it a good deal? Did they enjoy working with the person? And then let them help you mitigate the situation. All right, this gets me to my last point, that you really want to get this warm introduction. Sending an email to my email box saying, please fund me, is 0 chance, right? If you look at the deal flow and where it comes from, inbound from company management is less than 12% of the deals that come in. That doesn't mean those are the deals we do. That's just the ones that come in, right? So I think that focus on people who already work with the investor, people who are already recipients of their money, their mentoring, I think that gets you a lot closer to being taken seriously when you go to raise capital. I want to wrap up because Cleo said that no one can stare at a screen for more than 45 minutes. I want to leave you with some resources. Obviously, as an entrepreneur, I should pitch my own book, Startup Opportunities, a bestseller on Amazon. But there are a lot of other really great books about the art of pitching. Recently, The Art of Startup Fundraising has come out, and it's a very good overview of the process. I left you with a lot of links that you can follow up with. Each of these will help you as you figure out what to show investors, as you figure out how to manage investors. And on that note, I want to stop and open the floor up and see if we can't have a conversation instead of a lecture. Miss Cleo.
All right, everybody. So in the chat document, I have, or in the chat function rather, I've dropped a questions document. I'll throw it back in there.
Okay.
If that doesn't work, we can also do, not a Socratic method, but you guys can just turn on your mics and ask Sean a question.
Okay, so hold on. I'm going to try to make this like reasonable. Ants labor? Ants, are you here? Ants labor, you just asked the question.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. So your question, does the 10, 20, 30 rule apply to every angel round or everywhere? Everywhere. I'd say the 10, 20, 30 rule should apply in every meeting. But yeah, it's a pretty consistent rule. What's the next thing here? Great info. The higher we achieve with regards to the TR, the easier we can struggle with. How can we raise capital with an idea that's still in the lower level? Okay. Hami Dresda?
Yes.
Sorry for the mispronunciation. By all means, correct me.
Right.
You say the higher we achieve in being ready for investment, the easier we can attract investment. So how can we raise capital with an idea at the lower levels? You can't. And you shouldn't. You don't need money at that level. What you need to do is to go out and interview future customers and to engage in customer discovery. Once you have that feedback, you can build your minimum viable prototype and test it. Then you can take it to investors. I think when something's just an idea, people fall in love with the concept that's worth billions. Ideas are worth zero. Execution is worth everything. So, it's not enough just to have the idea, but you have to be able to execute against it. I've already made millions. I don't need to run another business. That's why I'm an investor.
Sorry, I have a question. So do I need to talk to customers, or how can I validate my idea?
So in the lean startup method, we take a lean canvas, which is the modern day's business plan, and we figure out the most important assumptions. So probably customers, problem, solution. And then we engage in a process called customer discovery. And it's a series of interviews that you run through your clients with your idea so that you get more specificity. And once you find that 90 out of 100 people want you to build what you're building, then you build an ugly version of it and see if they still want it. You can find out more information about that at 100stepstostartup.com, or if you Google Steve Blank and the term customer discovery.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Question. When would be the ideal time to bring in a business advisor to address the founder-investor relationship management? A business advisor. Well, if you are a founder and you have an investor, sorry, Ants, can you explain the question?
So normally people to hire a professional business advisor just to handle the relationship between founder and investors.
Why?
And
why?
Well,
why would you have anyone between you and the money? Why wouldn't you want to know?
Sorry, that's not necessarily just before we get the funding, but sometimes it's after the funding.
No, you don't need a business advisor at all.
Any kind of conflict.
You don't need a business advisor. So the ideal time to bring in a business advisor is never. Okay? Represent yourself. If you can't make an angel give you money, then no advisor is going to be able to dress you up. This isn't real estate. You're not a real estate agent. I don't need an advisor. And trust me, I was an advisor for years. But you don't need that. You talk to yourself. Nobody cares.
Sorry. What you mentioned, that makes sense for the angel investor. But what about when we approach a Series A round or Series B round?
It makes even more sense. No VC will pay an agency fee, a contingency fee. I'm not going to give you $500,000 and let you give 10% of it to an advisor because they told you to wear a bow tie. So no, VCs are precluded in most cases from paying referral fees, advisor fees, and there's no way in hell I'm going to let you use my money to pay someone else who's not working there. So I don't need a business advisor whatsoever. I don't want one. I don't want any intermediaries. I want to talk to the founder. If you need legal advice, get your lawyer to help you. If you don't understand the conversation, get your mentor, your board of directors to help you. But pimping yourself out and giving 5% of the company so that someone else can introduce you to a VC ain't going to do nothing. So let's move on.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Andrew, I'm an actor and I've been on television series for 3 seasons. It's a very well-known show on Amazon, but the problem is I've run out of money at this stage of my career. Okay, as an actor, I don't think you can get an investor. I think that's a patron, and I don't know anything about that. So I'm so sorry, Andrew. I don't know how as an actor you can get money from anything other than acting or producing products that other people act in. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to be facetious, but I don't know how to answer your question. Joe, don't you need products or something to sell before you find your customers? Joe, that is such a good question. So Joe asks, don't you need like a product or something, but to sell before you find your customers? And you would think so, Joe, because when I grew up, that's what you needed, right? You couldn't sell things that you don't need. But let me show you this trick. They call it crowdfunding. I don't have the product, but I got a really good picture of the product. And I show that picture in a bunch of videos, and I look for early adopters. And those early adopters are people who, with just the picture, are willing to give me some money. And because they're willing to give you money before there's even a product, guys and gals like me go, wow, there must really be a demand. And so when you go out and say, we have a demand for a smartwatch called the Pebble, I'm like, I don't know. And then when you come back and say we have 9 million early adopters who paid $100 each to get the watch, it's all over. So yes, Joe, we used to think you had to build the product before you talk to customers, but not anymore. Now we go and we confirm first that they are customers. We go confirm first that the problem that we think is the most inelastic, the one that they really want us to solve, is that. And we do all of that to avoid the very sad situation of I built the product and now I can't find anyone to sell it to. We've seen that too many times. Today's lean entrepreneur starts with the question of which customers can I access? What of those customers' problems are inelastic? Which of those inelastic problems can I solve exponentially better? And how do I do it faster, more agile than the next person? None of that requires having a product. I have more than 1,000 students on campus right now engaging with early adopters, and not one of them can build a product because there's so much work to be done before you start building your product. There's so many assumptions you want to confirm, like the demand, like understanding what's the most important factor. What does it have to do before people will give me their money? So I think, Joe, you're not wrong the way we grew up, but in the modern day, in post-2008, in the arrival of what's called the lean startup methodology, we no longer wait to engage customers. We wait to engage customers at the very beginning so that we find out that they don't want a pink car. They want blue cars. And that way we don't go build pink cars and then figure out we did it wrong. Okay, let's just see here. I saw on your graph the valley of death. And now I explain what that means. Sherry, are you still with us?
Yes, yes, I am.
Hi. So you want to know about the valley of death. So let me see if I can show it to everyone. So the valley of death is exactly what you think. It's where you don't want to be. Let me see if I can make this work. The valley of death. The valley of death is here. The valley of death is where it's really hard to be an entrepreneur. At this point, you have what's called problem solution fit. At this point, you have what's called product market fit. That's when you get venture capital and scale. But in those early days, like our friend was talking, when it's just an idea, there's nobody that's going to help you. It's all friends, family, personal loans, credit cards. I mean, that's how it's done. Once you have problem solution fit, once you have proven that what you're building matters, then you can get into seed stages, the angels, the accelerators, the seed VCs. And that's why they call this space under the graph, where you're spending money and have very little hope in the near future of recovering it, the valley of death. I'm sorry, it's not a nice concept, but that's where it comes from. I hope that helped, Cherry. I'm going to go to the next question. Okay, I may be losing things, so I'm just going to go back up a second here. The higher you achieve, when would be a ideal time to bring in a business advisor? Don't you need products? Okay, I'm an actor, don't know that one. I built a crowdfunding website. Great, but we already have crowdfunding websites. Thanks, information. What if I only have 5 minutes to pitch? If you only have 5 minutes to pitch, Mr. or Mrs. Foodie, I would take the 10 slides and stick them 2 on a page. You still want to cover the problem. You still want to cover the solution. You still want to talk about the team and why you have an unfair advantage. Remember, these meetings, whether they're 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, they're just meant to get you to the next step. 99 out of 100 meetings don't have a next step. I tell you no, or I tell you something that's equivalent to no. It's just getting to the next step is all you're looking for in an elevator pitch, in a 5-minute presentation. Valley of Death, Terry Knight. Okay. Hi, Terry. Are you still with us?
I'm here.
Hi,
I'm
Terry.
here, Sean.
So your
Hi.
question was, when we talk about research, what does it always have to be? First person or government? So it's a level of traction. Let me see if I can explain it to you. First person, I interviewed 100 people, showed them my prototype, and 99 of them pre-ordered. That's pretty good traction, right?
Yeah.
The Bank of Montreal says this is a hot sector. It's not as good traction, but at least it's not you. Remember, every entrepreneur is discounted from statements that are in their interest. This is a great market. Of course it is. You have to think that, otherwise you wouldn't be doing this. We have a great product. Of course you do. So we can't listen to any of that. So sales are the best proof. Pre-orders right after that. Engagement with the product, sign-ups. Then you get much lower. Clicks on a website, pre-orders.
Sure.
Nothing is as valid as early sales, early crowdfunding, early proof of concept. But you can only go so far. So I like to say all research matters. You should be doing first-person research so that you actually understand your customers better. But you can rely on third-party research. But just remember, the Bank of Montreal analyst is a Bank of Montreal analyst, not a successful entrepreneur. So if their report is wrong, they're not wrong. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Henman, if a dating app startup can bootstrap and find users and even start generating revenue and grow steadily, would you recommend they continue without VC funding or seek VC funding? If you have a dating app that has bootstrapped and found users and you generate revenue, you can just call me directly. I'll be happy to take your call.
Well, that's
the kind of thing you want to be able to start with.
But if you're making money, do you need that extra funding?
So it's a very different question. So the real question you're talking about is there will come a point of inflection when you can grow at a rapid pace, but in order to do that, you need more resources than you have. That is the ideal venture capital situation, when the market demand is such that you're really just paying to scale up the delivery. However, you are going to trade a couple of things for that capital. You're going to trade control, right? I only need 1 or 2% in a shareholders agreement to control your company. And as an investor, I'm going to protect myself and make sure I have super veto powers. Next, you're going to share the upside, right? I give you my money and then you do all the work and I still get paid out big. So, it's a trade-off. However, without the capital, you don't lose control and you're not forced to exit. Remember, once I give you money, the clock is ticking. I need you on my schedule. I don't care if it's in your best interest. I got to do what's in my shareholders' best interest, my fund holders' best interest. And so to me, it's a great place to be. If you can grow without venture and they're knocking on your door, asking you to expand, then it's really a question of cost of capital. Is it better for us to run and occupy a bigger space and own 80%? Or is it better for us to bootstrap and keep going? As an investor, I can tell you, bootstrapping is a lot more fun. Bootstrapping has a lot less legal issues, and bootstrapping still lets you run your own business. So every time you take investors, whether they be big or small, they're going to want to have some level of control over your future. So it really comes down to what you want to do. When you get to that point, you take their money. If you think with their money you can achieve more and you're willing to put up with the nonsense, or you don't, and you keep bootstrapping. But today, bootstrapping is the start of every great company. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned exiting. The thing with dating apps is that exit plans are limited. The only realistic exit plans for dating apps is to get acquired by Match, because dating apps don't IPO unless you grow to the size of Tinder and Bumble. So
what you're saying is I can't do what I want to do. So I don't know what to tell you. Lots of companies IPO. There's lots of dating companies that have IPO. There's lots of dating companies that get acquired. But 95% of the exits in Canada on Canadian founders are through acquisition. It's incredibly rare that you go out. Again, this should be a great problem. You've obviously decided this is the space you want to be in. But yes, the lack of exits will make it very difficult for investors to jump on board as quickly.
Yeah.
But there's already been lots of exits.
Okay, thanks.
No, thank you. Cleo, is this what you want? Is this the kind of thing we're supposed to do?
Yeah, this is
Well,
honestly, this is awesome.
Madhav. Jay Madhav, are you here, Jay Madhav?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Jay.
Yeah,
Thank you for showing that. Cool. Welcome. Let me read your question. Let me read your question to everybody. I have a prototype that no one has. Got it. Pilots have a problem. Got it. I have a solution. Great. I've never started any company. Do you think I should take someone as a partner or sell my patent? Okay. The idea that you're going to sell your patent and make millions off of it is a rarity. What usually happens is you go and you build a business that makes a company jealous because you've discovered something that they want to then do, and then they buy you to get you out of the way. So again, I'm oversimplifying it because I want to give you some value, and it's very hard with very little facts. But it's just the product, sir. It doesn't matter what it is, it's still a thing. So I would recommend, based on the long-standing relationship that we have and how long I've known you, I would recommend the second option is probably more enjoyable. If you found someone related to you, someone not related to you, a junior partner, someone who has very good, more modern skills and social networks and things like that, then together you could go through. Remember, you can build a website e-commerce on a Shopify platform in like 20 minutes. So, you can be selling this in advance, you could be doing this. But I think you would enjoy it more maybe if you had someone who wanted to take on that work. After all, if you could have done all those things, you probably would have. So
it's better to, since I have the prototype,
yeah,
and it works, but maybe better to just start my own company and it would
be better to start a small business to see if there's a market for that. Maybe you can build on a direct sales channel. Maybe you can find a supplier. And once you show that there's a market for this sort of thing, that's when everyone else shows up. Right? Because their R&D cost is probably more than their acquisition cost.
The market is there because the pilots are facing this and the frequency is...
well, the problem is there, sir. The market, you won't know the market is there until someone gives you the money.
Another thing is police officer on the street, they are also facing the lasers.
Well, I think it's an exciting opportunity. You may also look at Dragon's Den, but again, that's more of the fantasy than the reality. The reality is patents on their own are not enough. People want to see the patent deployed and making an opportunity come to fruition. But thank you for the question and good luck. Sebastian? Hi, Sebastian. Sebastian writes, after graduating Founder Institute. So Founder Institute is a great organization around the world. It's exactly what you think. It's a super school for founders and wannabe founders. We have a Toronto chapter, been around 8 years. Sunil Sharma's in charge, I think, still. Just a fabulous, fabulous program for people who are first-time founders. Okay, we raised angel money and are now in the middle of the development of our MVP. Perfect. We're building a dedicated space for anime, art, and video games. Okay, I'm still new to raising money. Can you help me understand the differences between Series A and B and when's a good time to run around to funding? Okay, I'm happy to answer that the best I can. So Series A is the name we give to the first funding round from venture capitalists. So that'll be your first multi-million-dollar round. So 2 million, 5 million. That's a Series A round. A Series A round in today's day and age is only available after what's known as product market fit. So product market fit is the moment that you have hammered out all the details of your business model. You know you're ready to scale because you know the channels, you know the revenue, you know the costs. Most people don't say you have product market fit until your lifetime value of a customer is more than 3 times the cost of adding a new customer. So Facebook adds a new customer at a penny, cost them a penny to put a new grandmother online, but that grandmother is worth $45 a year through marketing. So every new penny spent is worth $45. It's a pretty good idea to ramp up the business. So most venture capital doesn't get involved until a startup is literally no longer a startup, right? Because the definition of a startup is a company that is exploring its new business model. So once you know your business model, you're then ready to scale. So a Series A round comes after product market fit. After you've proven how much money a customer is worth to you, and you've shown that that is exponentially better than what it costs to add a new customer. What does a Series B mean? It just means it's later than Series A. It typically is a larger round, and it's from a later stage company. And then Series C, D, E are just names of larger rounds. By the time you get to E, we just did an E round. It was a $100 million round into a company. Now, all of that is after product market fit. So all of that is post-angel, post-MVP. Once you've got your sales established, you're ready to raise money. So we typically don't raise money in our portfolio until our companies are generating, $1 million ARR. So you're doing $10,000, $20,000 a month. It's not enough. You want to be doing much more than that because you want to be getting up there into the range that they want. So if you're talking about VC, usually you're looking at after product market fit, which means after you found how to efficiently sell and make the business profitable. And then B, C, D, they all follow after that. So when is it a good time to raise a round? When you don't need it. So you always raise a round for 12 to 18 months. So if you're going to run out of money in 12 months, it's a good time to start raising a round. Most rounds take between 3 and 6 months if all is regular. If it's going well, it'll take less time. And so you want to start that process when you have maybe 9 to 12 months of runway left. Runway is the fancy term for how much gas you have in the tank, how much money you have in the bank, how many more months you can survive without external capital. Are there any, Sebastian, I hope that helps. Friend Shilia, I must be saying that wrong, forgive me. Are there any particular websites that you could recommend for pitching investors? Kickstarter is a great place to pitch crowd fund investors. AngelList, AngelList.co is probably the world's best place to find angel money. The seed venture capitalists all participate in the same sort of acceleration program called F9, run by Techstars. If you have where you are and you want sort of a bridging, you may want to look at accelerators. Accelerators are sort of like Techstars, Y Combinator, the DMZ. They give you a chunk of change and 14 weeks of mentorship. And then at the end of it, they put you on stage and help you raise another round. So the question was, when is it a good time to raise a round? 9 to 12 months left of capital. Where can you go? There are great websites for crowdfunding. There's great websites for startup accelerators, and there's great websites for angels, and all of them are very good. Okay. Sakina Mihar? Hi, Sakina.
Hi.
Do you have any recommendations on a good exit strategy for telehealth startups? Yes, sell your company for $1 billion. Honestly, I don't know how to answer that question. A good exit strategy? Oh, okay, here's what I would do. Okay. When I want to sell a company, about 2 years before when I want to sell it, I look at all the acquirers. I look at who's bought companies like it. And then I sit down with the founders and I look at their HR plans, who the next people they are going to hire. And what I suggest they do is to from the company they want to buy them. So if you want to get bought by Kodiak, then go look for your next salesperson at Kodiak. What that does is it builds up these channels that information flows over, and it increases your chance to be acquired dramatically. Because those people come from the acquirer or from an acquirer, we've been able to actually increase the value of a sale because of the connections between the two companies. So if you are looking for a telehealth startup exit, then you should look at who would benefit from buying a telehealth startup, and then figure out how to build network connectivity to them by hiring their ex-employees, by engaging them in other events and other parts of networking. Sebastian has another question. We raised 35,000 US dollars pre-deal plus 1 million used term sheet for our project. Okay, thanks. I don't know what to say. I think it sounds like you've got a great opportunity. My professor and I have applied for a patent on image processing technique, which could be used for very good image alignment. No, there's no investors interested, I'm aware of, that are focused at the technological level. They're focused at the business level. So if you want to make that patent into an image processing technique-based business, then you can raise investors. But just to get someone to fund your study or to get someone to develop the product, I think you're much better to look at the commercialization sources of capital and go along that route. Okay, super useful. Thank you, Felicia. Okay, let's see. I think we're near the bottom. Cleo, any questions? I see Chris and I see Kirill and I see Darylyn and I see Terry. Feel free to jump in here. Anyone is welcome. My time is yours. Change layout. Let's see if I can see everybody. What is a good match for education in another country? I'm not sure what that question is. Abouk, could you tell me what you're trying to ask?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Abouk. Thank you so much for this information. It's definitely needed.
Mm-hmm.
I am from another country in Africa, and I'm pretty much just trying to bring, education back home. So I want to be able to build school for them in back home where I'm from, and to be able to educate the community to be able to have the same opportunity we have here. So what I'm trying to ask is, like, how you say about, like, if it's not make sure you find a good match and make sure that that person is interested in what you're trying to pitch to them. Pretty much what I'm trying to ask is, like, who would be like a good match, and like around where for that kind of for education kind of thing.
Well, thank you for the question, and thank you for the compliments. This isn't an area I work a lot in, but I can give you a little bit of insight. What you're talking is known as social entrepreneurship or social ventures. A company that has more than just profit as its bottom line. If you don't have profit, then there's nothing for investors to get involved in. So it's okay to have other goals, but if you're talking about running a profitable venture, then there are new types of investors that often are called impact investors, but they're really known as social venture investors. So those are people who have a fund that gears for world change, not just profit. But they are social ventures. They're not for loss companies. They're not for profit companies. They're not charities. They're businesses. Kiva.org is my favorite example. Kiva.org was one of the first crowdfunding platforms. And Kiva.org established funding for entrepreneurs in the third world through loans from entrepreneurs in the first world. So my $20 here goes to $20 there. So I would suggest if you look into the Kiva.org story, and the woman's name is Jessica, who founded it. You can see her TED Talk, and I think that may be the journey that you want to pursue. And if you want to Google it, I think you put it in quotes, impact investor. That's the fancy way for investors that want to just not make money. Most for-profit investors, like our fund, are banned from doing things like that. They don't want us hugging trees, helping kids, or doing all of that. We only have one goal, to turn the $50 million into $500 million. And then they feel we can do what we want with our profits. So I think that would eliminate us from being able to support your activity, no matter how noble. But there are a lot of growing organizations that do that. There's also a lot of new foundations, the Skoll Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but they're all along this idea of impact investing. So while I can't tell you the answer to your match, I think that might be a good starting place. I hope that helps.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It really does.
Okay. Mike, are you with us, Mike? Mike MW. Mike MW asks, if I have an advisor, how much equity do I have to give them? As little as possible. You want to give your advisors as much equity to justify their investment in you as you're required to. Ideally, a little less than you should have to. But I know I'm being facetious. It's usually, a board of directors will usually share 5%. So a board of advisors usually will share 2%. It's very small. The way you think about it is, if the advisor's time is $200 an hour, is he going to 200 hours in? And if it's 200 hours in, how much capital is that worth? And that's how you determine the equity. The real problem is that at your stage, the company may not have a valuation. So who's to say how many shares they should get? I can't pronounce it properly, but Kirill?
Hi, Sean. Thank you very much for your time today, by the way.
Oh,
I had a perspective question for you. So what do you think about what the funding strategy for companies that require substantial capital to even develop a prototype?
Yeah, so there are a class of companies that can't do the lean startup. No one calls them fat startups, but that's what they are. They're companies that are doing quantum encryption, biotechnology, biohack, things that have they're like FDA drugs. There's all sorts of regulatory and overcost. So the way you do that is a little bit different. You're still going to raise some funding, and you're still going to use what is a minimum viable prototype, but the proof is a much shallower proof. So you're doing less consumer proof and more technological proof. So it's sort of outside of the scope that we were talking about today. Often you'll hear them called as hard science startups or fat startups. Startups that there's no point in getting started unless you have $20 million. Building a quantum computer. You couldn't start that project without $100 million in the bank, even if you thought you could keep up, right? So, but Dave, who created D-Wave on the West Coast, which is a quantum computer, 20 years ago, he raised just enough money for proof of concept. And then once he had proof of concept, he raised just enough money for prototyping. And he limped along, $1 million here, $2 million there, until he could prove that his approach, while still ugly and inefficient, delivered exponential value, right? And so D-Wave, Google, and there's one other major company. They're all competing for quantum computers. But one of them is a startup in British Columbia, and the rest of them are world powers. So it is possible, but I would suggest to you that you need to pick who you're doing your deals with. So there are a handful of investors that are very technically savvy and very deep. Sir Terry in Ottawa, the founder of Nortel, right? Terry Matthews. His understanding of communication systems and that, he'll write a check for $5 million because he can understand the technology that's being shown to him. I'm not smart enough. I need to see customers. So I wouldn't be a good person for something like that, but they do exist. And you can find them. They're in the same leagues, the Peter Thiels, the Elon Musks. These ideas of there's no way to build a prototype without $5 million. But what they use is a higher level of technical due diligence. That's when they're reading the patents and they actually can read the patent and know what it says. Whereas all I can do is read a patent and kind of imagine what the business value is. I don't know if that helps, but you're not wrong. 90% of the startup rules won't apply in that case because you can't do it lean.
Thank you, Sean.
There's a question here from Augustina. I work in the beauty industry. I am creating a SaaS marketplace. I currently have a prototype, and a prototype is a backend. However, I'd also like to create a website as an MVP without coding this long. What would be sufficient to start? Okay. One thing at a time, Augustina. Show the one thing that you've built works. Right? If people will use your SaaS marketplace for beauty products, even while it's prototyping, even while the back end is like made of glue and duct tape, that's okay. Starting to get into this MVP and a website, that's okay too. They're all variations of channels. For a SaaS marketplace, it all comes down to what is your MRR? What is your monthly recurring revenue? How many users do you have? How often do they come? And so there's a lot of evidence of how to hack into a sales marketplace. And there's a lot of growth hacks that you could apply. But if you have an MVP And my suggestion is you start doing the one thing that all of your users need you to do, which might be transactioning a product, might be bringing a buyer and a seller together. You know, you don't need to be fancy as long as you can deliver on the unique value proposition and satisfy the unmet market need. Remember, folks, that's all we're doing. Entrepreneurs spot unmet market needs. They then look for exponential solutions which they can apply to those needs. And when they get it right, you start to get traction. And eventually that gets ready to scale. So I think what you should be doing if you already have your MVP and stuff is building less and testing more. Go take what you have and go see if people will use it. And again, I don't need you to make millions, but there's a lot more difference than we have 1,000 people on our website. Then we have 1,000 people on our website. 50% of them have made a transaction in the first 30 days. So I think you're ahead of the game, my friend Augustina. I think that you should take your SaaS marketplace and start demoing it and engaging with people. And if you want to use an MVP landing page to get it there, that's great. But until you prove the first thing, don't expand to the second and third. Big shout out. Thank you so much. Sharing, cultivate self. I'm in the health and wellness industry with a product. How do I stay encouraged in the negative cycle of the startups? That is such a great question. Okay. How do you stay positive when people keep slamming the door in your face? Okay, I'm not being sarcastic. I started being an entrepreneur at 13. I'm not 13 anymore. This is true. Entrepreneurship sucks. And the only time it doesn't suck is when it's awesome. And it goes back and forth and back and forth. And when it's 3 in the morning and you can't pay your staff and you're trying to hold it all together, it sucks. So I'm going to tell you, and in particular, the person identified as cultivate self, the answer to the question of how to stay positive. It's one word: community. The more you engage with people like this, the more you share your pain, the more you hear that you're also struggling and other people are struggling, the more you're inspired by each other, the more you're connected, the easier it goes. We created at Ryerson a safe space for entrepreneurs to screw up, for entrepreneurs to test, for entrepreneurs to explore. And we tell that to our students who are all paranoid to make a mistake and afraid of failure. And we try to get them through that because that's a natural evolution. But it's going to be hard. And the only way to make it easier is to not be alone. And sometimes our spouses don't get it. And sometimes our kids don't get it. And sometimes our parents don't get it. And only other entrepreneurs. So things like startup school, things like joining a zone. So if you have a product, you could, in the health and wellness industry, you could find a zone that focuses in it. And then you would be part of that zone. And that provides a community. And it's that community that will get you through those negatives. What really sucks is when you have to face all of that in the basement alone. You don't need to anymore. You have a community in this great city of ours, online and off. All right. I think we have time for a few more questions. Really, at this point, I'm just rambling. So feel free to ask anything you like. Cleo, I think they're done with me. Now, my last slide, which I'll show again, is here. Okay.
I have a question. The patent I have is only for US. Do you think I should apply patent in China and Europe?
Okay. So I haven't been a lawyer for about 15 years, so I'm required to tell you this is not legal advice. Okay, I cannot give you legal advice. You are asking a very difficult question. So a patent is only as good as your ability to enforce it. Okay? You will have zero standing in China. You will have even less standing in India. Standing is what lawyers call the ability to sue people or the ability to go to court. China isn't interested in how Canadians are being ripped off around the world. They're only interested in what they're interested in. And so your US patent will be recognized by most WTO nations, and you can have it extended based on the WTO rules, but none of that will help you from being knocked off in China and in India. I'm just being honest. If you have an amazing product, the world will demand it to be copied and ripped off. Okay? And your piece of paper that says you can't do it won't mean shit to anybody because you can't enforce it. So that piece of paper lets you walk into Walmart. It lets you point and say, that's my item. You can't sell it. And Walmart, being a good American company, they'll say, oh, that patent's valid. And they'll take it off the shelf. And they'll let you sue the person who made money on your back. But when that shit comes in from China and it's flooded with copycat products, it ain't going to help that you have a US patent. I mean, they'll tell you it helps, but it doesn't. The truth is you have to live in the real world, and the patent that you have will cover 70% of the world. And you don't have an ability to make it any better than that. You could hire a Chinese firm, you could file a Chinese patent equivalent, but good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. They're always great people. And these are just my 2 cents, right? I've only been doing this like for 35 years. You know, like, I'm no expert.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's more than my wife does. We're currently in the business of delivering. Okay, Cherry. We're currently in the business of delivering in-home massage and online pelvic floor physiotherapy. Cool. After 2 years, we don't think that's where we can make the most impact. Recently, we've conducted 30 customer calls. Great first step, Cherry, and found a problem that we want to pivot to, which is mental health. My question is, how do we position the pivot with regarding pitching investors? Okay, well, Cherry, just because people have a problem in mental health, it doesn't mean you can solve it. So the first question is, you created a business based on what you could sell. How do you know enough about mental health to be able to sell that? Are you also a mental health PhD or a psychiatrist? Or do you have some mental health approach that's unique to your business? Because when you choose an opportunity, you got to make sure that you actually have something that's different, that's exponentially different, that you are better at than other people. You know, you shouldn't just go into a market because there's a market. If you don't have a differentiator, you're not going to get anywhere. And then the other one is access. If you don't have access to early adopters suffering from that problem, you'll never get the traction you needed to move past that initial flow. So I think a pivot is fine, but I think what you've missed is service businesses don't scale. My wife was a travel agent. No matter how much funding I gave her, you can't make a travel agency scale, right? You can't make a lawyer scale. They charge you $800 an hour. You want to make more money and work more hours. So you're a massage therapist, and now you're saying we could deliver more impact, which is a nice way of saying we want to make more money. And to make more money, you want to move into something that's digital and offers a mental health aspect. But I don't know that you have exponential skill there. My bigger question was, what unmet market needs do those people who deliver in-home massage have that you have mastered? You've been doing it for 2 years. Everyone else just closed their clinic and now has to figure it out. I would love to see a GPS matching system like Tinder that could show me massage therapists within a 5-kilometer radius that would be willing to work this afternoon. And then there's a market there. But again, that's a totally different business than being a massage therapist. But if you're looking to get out of the services and digitize, then you should stick to what you do really well and what you have great insight into. Simply pivoting to mental wellness isn't sufficient unless you have a large history of mental wellness. Thank you so much. I think you can see my email address. I'll leave it up there. As a university professor, I am paid with your tax dollars, so feel free to reach out and I will do the best I can to answer your questions. Again, take them with a grain of salt. I'm just one person. This is just my experience. I'm happy to be wrong. More importantly, I hope you found this helpful, and I look forward to speaking to you all in the future. Over to you, Cleo.
Amazing. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. I'm glad we kept Sean till the bitter end. I'm going to be sending out our Startup School survey shortly, so if you guys can all fill it out so that we can keep bringing you awesome Startup School forever and ever, because we need data and metrics. Sean, thank you for another fantastic session.
I really hope people will take up the offer of Zone Learning, right? Oh. Don't worry if you're not connected to Ryerson. We'll give you a t-shirt, take your picture, and call you a Ryersonian.
Yes,
right?
And I will drop that link back in the chat again. So if you guys want to learn more about Zone Learning, which is, again, free and open to every single person, you're absolutely welcome to. I'm throwing it in the chat right now. Please add your name and email. we'll make sure that we do that and sign up for next week's sessions. And yes, guys, the slides will be available as will the recording. All right, bye everyone.
Hey Cleo, just to give you a quick update. So in terms of the streaming stuff, I think I have to buy a little device or something just so I can stream in real time. But I'm gonna record a sample of me DJing like with the green screen and a background and the Lux Life logo in the frame. So I have a friend who does that for a living. She live streams and has a platform that she uses mostly in Europe, but I think actually in the US as well. So it's an online streaming platform for companies, corporate companies, things like that. So she's gonna help me out with the sample part, just putting the logo on it.
Hey guys, it's going to be posted on the Startup School website. So everything you need to know about Startup School is always in like our Eventbrite. It's on our emails that we send you every week. If you look in the bottom of my signature, you'll have all kinds of links. So it's ryersonstartupschool.com. And that's where we'll post the video and slides from every single week. You can also check underneath past sessions on that website. And you'll also see like basically every single session we've ever done for the past, like, I don't know, 4 years. So you can feel free to check out there. I'm going to close this chat in just a couple of minutes. So if you guys want to sign up for the Zone Learning, you can click that document. Otherwise, I will end this by 7:30.
Hello?
Oh, hi, Alana. Hi, babe.
Hi.
What are you doing?
We're going home.
Where? Oh.
And donuts for our 100 years practice.
Ooh.
Practice. 300 days.
300 days. I know you were on Zoom and I missed it. I'm so sorry. I'm very sad about that. Was it awesome?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love your hair. Can you lift up the phone and show me a little bit? Beautiful. You have a headband. You've got your afro. You're looking cute.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you feel like you did a really good job?
Yeah. Why is it so bright?
Oh, well, because I have a light right there beside me. So you can see my face, you know? It's not fun. I don't think you want to see dark. You know? Did everyone come? Who came to watch you?
Yeah.
Yeah, mommy, daddy.
Some people will miss.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that happens. But maybe they caught it on Zoom.
They did.
Yeah.
And also the regular phones.
Yes, exactly. On Zoom, on their phones. I think it's awesome. Did you guys record it?
No, we didn't.
Oh, well, that means I missed it and I'm never going to be able to see it. And I'm kind of upset about it, but I had to.
We can do something for you.
You could? Oh, that would make me so happy. I would love it if you did something for me.
Maybe after dinner we can.
You know what? Nothing would make me happier. Maybe not tonight after dinner, but maybe on another time when, you know, when it's not so late. I would be so very excited to see anything that you made me.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm very proud of you. I'm sorry I missed your show. And I can't wait to see whatever you come up with. You are fantastic. Great job. And keep up all the good work. Because 300 Days of Violin is incredible.
Okay.
All right, baby. I'll talk to you later, okay?
Bye.
Bye,
Thank
honey.
you.
You're welcome.